Hey, welcome. Have you ever felt like you're just wading through a sea of writing that's, well, vague, fluffy, and you forget it the second you've read it? Yeah, me too. Well, today we're grabbing a lifeline thrown to us by one of the 20th century's most demanding poets. We're going to break down a method to totally transform your writing and, believe it or not, your thinking from abstract and weak to concrete and powerful.
You know the feeling, right? You finish an article, a report, even an email, and you're just left with nothing. The words just kind of slide right off your brain. And look, that isn't just bad luck. It's usually a failure of the language itself, a failure to really connect with the world in a way that matters. So our guide for this whole journey is the poet Ezra Pound. Now, he was a controversial figure, for sure, but he was also an absolute master craftsman who demanded nothing less than total precision. His core belief? That great writing isn't just pulled out of thin air. Nope, it's built from the hard, solid stuff of the world around us. And this one quote, this is basically the key that unlocks his entire philosophy. All right, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with Pound's two main principles. Then we're going to walk through his pretty intense 45-day writing workout, which he broke down into three distinct phases. And then, at the end, we'll connect the dots and see how all this tough practice makes us not just better writers, but way sharper readers and critics too. Okay, so at the very heart of Pound's entire method, you'll find two fundamental ideas. Think of them as the twin engines that drive really powerful communication. They might even seem like they're complete opposites, but as you're about to see, they work together in this perfect, delicate balance. So on one side, you have Dichten, which is a German word that basically means to condense, to pack as much meaning in as possible. And on the other side, you've got Krinos, a Greek word that means to choose, to select, to make a critical judgment. For Pound, all powerful writing exists in this dynamic tension between these two forces. You have to load your words with meaning, but you also have to be ruthless about choosing only the right words to begin with. Let's zoom in on Dichten for a second. Pound really saw this as the #1 job of a poet, but honestly, it applies to any kind of writing. It is the art of making every single word pull its own weight. No fluff, no passengers just along for the ride. The goal is to get the maximum possible meaning density, to charge your language just like a battery. And then you've got Krino. This is the intellectual muscle of the operation. It's about your ability to critically select your material. Pound was adamant that you can't write powerfully about something you haven't really looked at and examined for yourself firsthand. Krino is that act of sifting through all your experiences, all your language, and making these sharp, informed judgments about what actually matters. All right, let's get into phase 1 of Pound's 45-day plan. See, before you can condense or choose, you first have to learn how to perceive the world properly. So these first 15 days, they're all about retraining your senses, grounding your mind in the physical world, and moving away from these fuzzy, vague ideas and toward direct, hands-on observation. The workout kicks off with 3 key exercises. First up is Phanopoeia, which is all about throwing a sharp, clear visual image into the reader's mind. Second is Melopoeia, which is about tuning your ear to the actual sound and rhythm of the words. And third, you start combining these senses to look at a subject from a bunch of different angles all at once. Now, this is so cool because it really gets to the heart of what Pound believed. He bases this first exercise on that famous story about the biologist Louis Agassiz. Agassiz would supposedly make his students just stare at a fish for hours, sometimes for days, until they could describe it with absolute factual precision. No saying it's a beautiful fish or a sad fish, just the facts, the scales, the fins, the exact curve of its spine. For Pound, this is where real literacy begins, not with big ideas, but with disciplined, honest-to-goodness seeing. Okay, so once you've trained yourself to see the world with precision, phase 2 is all about learning to look at language with that exact same critical eye. This is where you really start to develop your sense of Krinos. It's all about going from being a passive consumer of words to being an active, critical judge, wielding a scalpel to just cut away all the fat. The exercises in this phase are designed to build up your critical muscles. First, you're going to test abstract statements using what Pound called the ideogrammic method. Then, you're going to perform the purge, which is a ruthless hunt for any and every inefficient word. And finally, you'll use parody as a tool to expose language that's lazy or even dishonest. And this slide illustrates the ideogrammic method perfectly. Pound used to say that an abstract word like, say, patriotism, is like an uncashed check. By itself, it has no real value. To give it value, you have to back it up with concrete specimens, the actual facts, the images, the actions that give it meaning. A soldier's worn out boots, a citizen casting a vote, a protest sign held high. Without those concrete examples, the word patriotism is just empty noise. This next exercise, the purge, it's brutal, but it's absolutely essential. You swap your writing with a partner, and your job is to be a merciless editor. The goal isn't to be nice, it's to challenge every single word. Does this word do a job? Does it make things clearer? Or is it just taking up space? This process forces you to justify every choice you make, and the result is language that's efficient, accurate, and crystal clear. So now we've arrived at the final phase. You've trained your senses, you've sharpened your critical judgment. Now it's time to bring it all together. This is where Dichten, that idea of condensation, really takes center stage. The goal here is to build something that lasts, a piece of writing so packed, so potent, that it becomes what Pound would call a monument to its idea. So the final 15 days are focused on a few key things. First, taking wordy prose and boiling it down to its absolute essence. Second, practicing precise description over and over until it's unmistakable. And finally, creating a finished piece that is just maximally charged with meaning, using every single tool you've developed along the way. Let's look at a really practical example. So here, we've got a sentence that's fine. It's perfectly normal, but it's wordy, it's inefficient, it's full of these placeholder words like important, objective, and fundamental essence. It's exactly the kind of writing that just washes right over you, you know? And voila, here's what you get after you apply Pound's principles. We went from 20 words down to just 6, and guess what? Nothing of value was lost. In fact, the meaning is actually stronger now. It's clearer, it's more direct. This is exactly what Pound was talking about when he said poetry consists of gists and piths. You've stripped away all the noise to reveal the powerful core. So, what's the big takeaway here? Why does all of this matter? Well, this isn't just some obscure workout for poets. This kind of rigorous training in precision and judgment, it fundamentally changes how you interact with all language. It gives you the tools to become a much, much more insightful reader and critic. So let's make that connection really explicit. After going through all this training in Krino, choosing, and dicting, condensing, you're not just a better writer. You're now equipped with this brand new set of tools to go out and analyze the entire poetic arsenal you might find in other people's work. And here's exactly how those skills translate into a powerful analytical toolkit. When you practice Phenopia, the art of the visual, you're really training your eye to spot and dissect powerful imagery. The work you do on Melopia attunes your ear to the music of language, its rhythm, meter, and alliteration. That ruthless discipline from the purge makes you super sensitive to a word's emotional baggage versus its dictionary definition, so you learn to critique connotation versus denotation. This deepens your grasp of logopeia, the dance of ideas in language, letting you analyze tone, irony, and ambiguity. And finally, that ideogrammic method, it's the perfect tool for cracking open symbols and allegory by showing you exactly how concrete things get charged with abstract meaning. Every exercise you did becomes a key, unlocking a deeper level of analysis. And really, that's the ultimate point. This 45-day plan is so much more than a writing course. It's a mental discipline. By forcing yourself to ground your language in concrete reality, to choose every word with real intention, and to condense every thought down to its core, you are literally training yourself to think with more clarity, more precision, and more power. So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. Is the act of struggling for the perfect word, of cutting away everything that isn't essential, is that just a technical skill for writers, or is it a fundamental practice for anyone who wants to understand the world and their own mind a whole lot more clearly?